Chapter 10. By the time Alfred arrived back at the farm, it was already dark and Mrs. Pratt had gone home. Melba was so irritated with Alfred that she had snapped at Peg and Danny all afternoon, and Peg had clung to Danny for comfort. "What are you writing?" Peg had asked Danny, squeezing into the chair beside him and jostling his elbow. A drop of ink splattered on one edge of the paper. Danny had been too excited to care. "I'm writing a long letter to Ma," he said. "I've got a lot to tell her." "What?" "I told her about Alfred, about the farm, how much we miss her, and I wrote what I told Alfred about her." And Danny looked carefully at Peg, wondering just how much information to give her. He decided to be cautious. "I asked her to come visit us." Peg had gasped, jumping to her feet. "Could Ma do that?" "Hush," Danny hissed at her, "but this is our secret. Don't say anything until I tell you what you can." Peg was nodding solemnly, her eyes shining. Danny had quickly finished his letter and taken it upstairs for safekeeping. He could mail it the moment Alfred decided to send for Ma. Now as Danny heard Alfred ride up, it was all he could do to keep from running from the barn to ask if he'd already gone to St. Joseph to talk to Catherine or Andrew. Instinctively, he knew he shouldn't. He should give Alfred the idea, but he couldn't push him. Look what happened with Melba and Mrs. Pratka when they had tried it. Danny held his breath as Alfred entered the parlor. Peg ran for a kiss, but Melba let out a long, abbreviated sigh. "Well," she said, "did you accomplish your very important errand?" "Yes, I did," Alfred said. He sat on the sofa next to Danny. Melba's nose tilted a little bit higher. She sniffed. "Is it too much to ask that you tell me why you had to rush off like you did? You hurt Annie's feelings. She thought you didn't like the way she roasted the chicken." "Sorry, didn't mean to hurt anyone." "Well, you might tell her that." "I will, when I have the opportunity." Melba sighed again and picked up her needlework. Danny gritted his teeth. He, too, was yearning to know why Alfred had ridden to St. Joseph. The room was quiet for a few moments, and then Melba dropped the needlework into her lap and looked directly in Alfred's eyes. "Have you given serious thought to our conversation from this morning?" "Yes, I have," Alfred said. "I've decided you're right. I should make plans to marry soon." Peg stared at Alfred, hugging Whiskers so tightly he mewed in complaint and tried to squirm from her arms. Danny closed his eyes and unable to breathe, but Melba exclaimed, "Good, and you'll be so pleased. I'll stay for the wedding." "There may be a wedding, but it will not include any," Alfred said. As Melba's mouth fell open, he added, "I received the information I needed today from Andrew McNair. Together we drafted a telegram in which I invited a woman to consider becoming my wife." Melba shrieked. "You did what? Who is she?" Alfred rested a hand on Danny's shoulder. "Noreen Kelly," he said, "the children's mother." Peg and Danny made such a racket, jumping up and down, hugging each other and Alfred, and screaming with delight, that they didn't notice for a few moments that Melba had fallen back, swooning, into her chair. She had to be helped out of the room, where she could loosen her corset strings and lie on her bed with a cold, wet cloth on her forehead before Danny could question Alfred further. "Remember, your mother may not accept," Alfred warned Peg and Danny. "She may not want to make a drastic change to her life in the city from the city to farm life." "She lived on a farm in Ireland," Danny said. "I'm sure she won't want to stay in a small attic room in New York, working for some other family, when she could be living in the countryside in a home of her own." He paused. "And with her own children again." "Danny wrote a letter to Ma and asked her to come," Peg said. Danny ducked her head and grinned at Alfred. "Just in case you wanted. I was ready to mail it." "We'll mail it tomorrow." Danny hugged Alfred. "You won't be sorry," he said. "I hadn't planned to tell you until we received an answer from your mother," Alfred said. He glanced toward the stairs, and Danny knew what Alfred meant when he added, "But things are rapidly getting out of hand." "Who's going to tell Mrs. Pratka?" Danny asked. He and Alfred looked at each other. "Let's hope Melba will," Alfred mumbled. A voice came from the doorway. "I will, and I'll add that you've taken leave of your senses," Melba said. She flounced into the room and sat stiffly in one of the chairs. "It's time for some plain talk, Alfred," she said. You don't know this woman you offered marriage to. You know nothing about her." "Her name's Noreen Kelly," Alfred said. "All right, Noreen Kelly. What do you know about her?" Andrew said he was told she was a woman of great courage and principle. Peg spoke up. "She's beautiful." "She loves us," Danny said. "She's our mother." Peg's face was shining. Melba sighed and sank back in the chair. "Very well, Alfred, you were thinking of the children, but how can you don't love this woman." "You are the one who reminded me that love was unnecessary." "I didn't mean," Melba broke off, frowning for a moment before she sat upright again. "What's done is done. Even though I think you made a terrible mistake, Alfred, now it's time for you to make plans for the future. When do you think you'll hear from this woman?" Alfred's eyebrows dipped into a scowl, and she quickly amended. "Noreen Kelly, that is. We hope within a week or two." "And if she agrees, she would arrive in another 2 weeks. Is that right?" "I suppose so." "Where will she stay when she arrives in St. Joseph?" "Catherine Banks has offered her home." Melba nodded, and Danny could see her ticking points off her mind, as though they were written on a long list. "Very well. The wedding can take place soon afterward. I will write Samuel and tell him he cannot expect me until the latter part of February. In the meantime, we'll clean up the house top to bottom. I will not have Mrs. Kelly thinking I'm shirking my job when it comes to helping you." Melba, who was now caught up in her plans, rattled on, but Danny stopped listening. "Ma," he thought over and over, as though his thoughts could reach her. "Ma, you've got to agree. You've got to come." The answer came by telegraph much sooner than Danny had expected, and was hand-delivered by Andrew late one afternoon. The icicles on the leaves outside the kitchen window had caught the sunlight, casting streaks of glittering, unnatural light into the room. Danny felt as though he'd been caught in an unreal world, a sparkling kind of dream, as he watched Alfred slowly and deliberately tear open the envelope, remove the message, and read it. So scared that his stomach hurt, Danny wanted to grab the paper from Alfred's hand and read for himself what he said. Peg stared up at Alfred while Melba and Gussie, who had been scrubbing the oven and the brick fireplace, turned from their work. No one spoke, no one moved. Finally, Alfred looked down at Danny and Peg. He began to speak and had to stop and clear his throat. He tried again, the muscles of his neck strained and tense. "Your mother will come," he managed to say. Peg flew into Danny's arms, hopping up and down so excited he had to fight to keep his balance. But he saw Alfred turn to Andrew with a stricken look on his face and murmur under his breath, "What have I done?" "Look at the children," Andrew answered. Gussie got to her feet, dusting off her apron with hands so grimy it left black streaks. "Miss Kelly won't be the first wife to be sent for by mail," she said. "I heard of a whole boat full of 'em who was sailing from New England all the way to Oregon because there was no women living there, and those men badly needed wives." "Gussie," Melba hissed, "topics like that are not fit for a girl your age to speak of, especially in mixed company." Gussie simply shrugged. "If you say so," she answered, "but it's a good story. If you want to hear it, we'll wait till the mixed company's gone and I'll tell you." Andrew smiled and said, "Time for me to head back to town. It's mighty cold once the sun goes down." Alfred pulled on his coat and followed him out of the kitchen door. Danny was right on his heels. "My parents only knew each other for 2 weeks before they were married," Andrew said. "Pa spied this pretty girl in town, asked his father's permission to court her. My mother was agreeable and of the age to marry, so that was that. They raised a family, were good to the children and to each other. I'd say it worked out well." "Your parents were young," Alfred said. "Mrs. Kelly and I have reached middle age. We've both been married before. That should make it all the easier for you to settle into married life again, shouldn't it?" "I suppose so," Alfred said. "I guess we'll just have to wait and see if it works out." "Of course it's going to work out," Danny thought. "It has to." As Andrew swung up on his horse, Alfred said wryly, "It just occurred to me that for a man who's never married, you're pretty free with your advice. Perhaps I'd take you more seriously if you were married yourself." "Maybe Mr. McNair needs Aunt Melba to talk to him," Danny offered, "and to Cat. I'm Mrs. Banks, too." Andrew laughed, his face flushed red. "Is that obvious?" "Is it obvious?" he mumbled, either to Alfred or to himself. Danny couldn't tell. Alfred put a hand on Danny's shoulder. "That's enough, Danny. Mr. McNair's thoughts are his own, unless he decides to share them with someone else." His eyes twinkled as he looked at Andrew, who flushed again, wheeled his horse around, and rode off toward St. Joe. Danny hoped to keep a secret that Ma was coming, but with Gussie to report the story to Wilmer, there was no chance. "Heard the good news, Danny," Miss Clark said to him as he arrived at school, stomping the snow from his boots and tugging off his gloves to blow on his cold fingers. "I'm delighted. You're going to be reunited with your mother." "I think it's exciting," Laura Lee giggled and tossed back her curls. "Coming all the way to marry a man she's never met. I'd never heard of anyone doing that." "Then you ain't heard of Zeke Muffet," Miller said. "Zeke's farmed that place down the junction, and 2 years ago he got himself a mail-order bride." "Ma's not a mail-order bride," Danny yelled at Wilmer. "Your foster pa writ a letter for her, didn't he?" "It wasn't a letter, it was a telegram." "Which makes it entirely different," Miss Clark said. "I'm going to ring the bell in 2 minutes. Hang up your coats, get to your desks, no more dawdling." They managed to elbow Wilmer as they crowded into the cloakroom, but to his surprise, Wilmer didn't react. He hung up his coat and quickly said to Danny, "I'm real glad you're going to get to see your ma again." "Thanks," Danny said. He choked up tears burning his eyes, but Wilmer pretended not to notice. There'd be 3 weeks to wait, close to 4, and Danny wondered how he managed to live through them. Each time he thought he'd explode with impatience, he'd say over and over to himself, "Ma's coming. She's on her way. Ma's going to be here soon." The train that brought Noreen Kelly to St. Joseph arrived ahead of schedule, so she was waiting on the platform when Danny, Peg, and Alfred arrived. Danny saw Ma standing tall and stately, wearing a deep blue full-skirt coat and a small blue feathered hat, which set off her hair, causing it to gleam like fire in the morning light. He and Peg raced to their mother, flinging their arms around her, and she dropped to her knees, tightly hugging them both. "My darling Peg," Ma cried. "Danny, oh, love, how you've grown." With the laughter and hugs and kisses and a few tears of happiness, Danny was heedless of the broad-shouldered, dark-haired man standing next to Ma, so the man helped her to her feet, saying, "You have a fine family, Mrs. Kelly." Danny quickly looked up. He knew the man. The man was John Murphy. He owned the blacksmith shop next to the stables. "Good day to you, Danny," John Murphy said, his words musical with a familiar brogue. He glanced at Ma and said, "It was my great fortune to become acquainted with your mother soon after I boarded the train in Hannibal." "Mr. Murphy's from Ireland, too," Ma said as she dusted off her coat. "Before he came to St. Joseph to live, Mr. Murphy lived in a town not far from where I was born." She smiled, too, looking at Danny, but at Mr. Murphy. Danny frantically looked around for Alfred, who had hung back, obviously wanting to give Danny and Peg the chance to greet their mother without interruption. But this was no time to hang back. It was time for Ma to stop smiling at Mr. Murphy and meet Alfred. Danny beckoned wildly, and Alfred slowly walked forward to join them. Danny opened his mouth to speak, but Mr. Murphy beat him to it. "Mrs. Kelly," he said with a slight bow, "may I present to you Mr. Alfred Swenson." "How do you do, Mrs. Kelly?" Alfred said, so quietly he could barely be heard. "Very well, Mr. Swenson, thank you," Ma said firmly and held out her right hand, her left hand firmly around Peg's shoulders. Alfred took it, and for just a moment he and Ma silently studied each other's faces. Then he tried to read what they were thinking, but Alfred seemed as solemn as ever, and Ma smiled, gently pulling her hand away. I thank you for taking such good care of Danny and Peg. You and your wife, you were both very kind. Danny didn't like the way Ma was talking, as though this was part of the past. He edged closer to Ma, then his back to Mr. Murphy, and said, Ma, you'll like the farm. It's near the river. There's woods and green hills. Maybe it's like Ireland. When you see it, you'll know. Ma bent to kiss his forehead. Oh, Danny, the way you go on. It's so good to hear your voice again. I've missed you all so terribly much. I've been so lonely for you. I can't wait to see the others too, Mike, Francis, and little Petey. Do you know that Megan has learned to read and write? She sent another letter only 2 weeks ago. Peg burrowed into the skirt of Ma's long coat and clung tightly. I helped Mr. Swenson, Danny continued. He told me I'm as good as any farmhand, and Peg and I go to school, and I've got a kitten named Whiskers, Peg chimed in. The station platform was empty except for the little family and Mr. Murphy. Danny shot Mr. Murphy a look of irritation, hoping he'd understand and go away. Instead, Mr. Murphy said, the air is cold, Miss Kelly. I suggest we take you out of the chill. I'm sorry. Alfred looked embarrassed. I should have thought. Danny scowled. Alfred didn't need to apologize. Anyone could see he was just being kind and patient. Why had Mr. Murphy have to poke his nose in where it wasn't wanted? I understand I'm to stay with a Mrs. Banks, Ma said, her left arm still pressed Peg tightly to her side. I'd like to meet this kind lady. Of course, Alfred said clumsily, picking up Ma's satchel. You must be tired from the trip. I'm sure you'd like to rest. For some reason, Alfred's face flushed a deep red. Ma got a mischievous twinkle in her eye. I'm not the least bit tired, Mr. Swenson. I have a strong constitution. I believe Danny described me to you as strong as a whole team of horses. She laughed, and Mr. Murphy laughed too, but Alfred looked even more solemn. The buggy's hitched to the big oak tree, Alfred said. He reached for Ma's elbow, but Ma had Danny in one hand and Peg in the other and was already striding toward the buggy. Danny couldn't believe that Mr. Murphy didn't have the good sense to leave. He actually walked with Alfred to the buggy and looked up at Ma. Since you'll be visiting town for a while with Catherine Banks, I'll be sure to be seeing you now and then, he said. He tipped his hat, adding, pleasant day to one and all. Alfred climbed into the buggy and flicked the reins. Catherine's house is high on the hill with a good view of the river, he said. She asked me to take your things there and then, if you were agreeable, to bring you to the store to meet her. Most of the time I have a pleasant nature and try to be most agreeable, Ma teased. Alfred's face flushed again. I didn't mean, perhaps I chose the wrong words. Ma laughed again. I know what you meant, Mr. Swenson. I was trying to ease the strain with a little humor. Alfred looked at Ma in bewilderment. I don't understand. To make our meeting a little less difficult for both of us, Ma said. Alfred nodded. I see. You're a kind man, Mr. Swenson, Ma said. I'm grateful to you for the loan to help pay for my train fare to St. Joseph. The family that employed me gave me a parting gift of a coat which belonged to one of their daughters, my satchel, and some money. I'll turn the full amount over to you. It's almost enough to pay you back. I didn't expect the money to be repaid, Alfred stammered. Nevertheless, it will be repaid. I greatly appreciate your kindness, but I'm an independent woman, and I'll not feel right owing you a single cent. Ma beamed and hugged Danny and Peg to her again. Now tell me, Mr. Swenson, have these two rapscallions given you a great deal of trouble? Alfred's eyebrow shot up. Oh, no, he insisted. They've been very good children. Peg giggled, and Alfred looked confused. I see. Another joke. He turned his attention to the horse as the road curved upward, and the pace of the buggy slowed as the team strained against the slope. Through the trees, Dan caught glimpses of the Missouri River, silver in the thin sunlight. There's much we need to learn about each other, Mr. Swenson, Ma said gently. I'll drive you out to the farm after you've met Mrs. Banks, Alfred said. I'll show you around the property, give you a list of my assets. The farm has provided a steady income, though there's not little cash to because of the profit. Most profit has been invested in more cattle, more land, more crops. Ma reached over and rested her gloved fingertips on his arm. You are a kind man and generous to want to share all this with me. But it is you I want to learn about, not your property. Do you like to read books? Tell stories? Do you like to dance? Alfred looked at Ma warily as if he was expecting another joke. There have been dances at the church, he said seriously, but I never learned to dance. There was never time. How well I know, Ma said. As a girl, I love to dance, but there's always so much work to be done. It's been a long, long time since I've had the chance to go to a dance, she grinned. At the place where I worked, the houseman played the fiddle. Sometimes when the master and mistress were away, the rest of us would gather in the kitchen. He'd play a jig that could set boots to dancing on their own. The cook and I would pick up our skirts the way we'd go through the old steps, and the others laughing and clapping. It was grand fun. Danny laughed as he pictured it. He didn't hurt so much to imagine that part of Ma's life now that she was here in St. Joseph. Alfred pulled the horses to a stop in front of the white clapboard house. He jumped down and hitched them to the post at the side of the road, where he held up a hand to help Ma from the buggy. As Ma stepped to the ground and closed her eyes and took a deep breath, the air here's clean, not as it was in Ireland. Not quite the same, but close to it. Not a bit like New York. She led the way to Catherine's front door. Catherine said to tell you that your room will be the second bedroom on the right, Alfred said. Ma took the satchel from his hands. I'll wash my face and hands, she said, and be with you soon. I want to go with you, Peg said, and ran after her mother. Danny followed Alfred back to the buggy and sat beside him on the front seat. Alfred didn't speak. Danny couldn't stand it. He finally blurted out, Well, wasn't I right about Ma? She's an exceptionally beautiful woman, Alfred said. Danny shrugged. I guess. But I wasn't thinking about that. I meant the rest of it. Alfred leaned back and patted Danny's shoulder. I'm sure she was everything you said she was, even more. Your mother's very, powerful woman. Powerful? Was that good or bad? Just what did Alfred mean? Danny sneaked a look at Alfred, but it was impossible to read his face.